what is the appropriate focal length for vlogging? So when it comes to focal lengths, you really have three specific options, right? You got like an ultra wide, and I'm going to showcase to you what each one of these things are and the two things you really need to keep in mind. You got ultra wide, you got medium, and you've got not really telephoto, but really cropped in, giving you a up close and personal look. So let's first talk about the first focal length, which I call the Canadian focal length. And the reason I call this the Canadian focal length, basically, there's a lot of Canadian YouTubers that tend to have like this whole ultra wide spaghetti arm type of focal length going, where there's a lot of stuff happening in the background. Sometimes the background might even be blurred out, but for whatever reason, a lot of Canadians tend to use this particular focal length. And so the benefit of this focal length is it gives a lot of context to what's happening and what you're doing and you know, the stuff that's going around. This is also known as the GoPro focal length because GoPro is something similar to this. Now, if you're looking at a number specific to what focal length this is basically a 16mm focal length attached to a focal reducer. So effectively, you're looking at 17mm, but that doesn't matter. Forget about the numbers don't matter here. What matters is what you're getting. The effect of an ultra wide angle, 16, 17, 18mm, is that if you hold out your arm, such as this, you're gonna look like you got some spaghetti arms going on, okay? But at the same time, if you get up close and personal, right, it distorts the face, it stretches out. Now, this is a close-up, right here. And this is the same exact composition in that one right there. Look at the difference, right? Look at the difference in terms of how my face looks here and how my face looks here. Very different focal length. Now, this focal length is probably closer to, I don't know, maybe 100mm, right? Because the camera is actually really far away. And if you're wondering how far away that camera is, it's that camera over there, right? And so, let me focus up, boom, there you go. That's how far these cameras are. That's Yusuf in the background. And we've got that camera over there. So these cameras are relatively really far. As you'll notice, as I move, there's a lot of distortion, right? Ultra wide angles, 17mm, 16mm on 1.1 crop. And so this is the effect that you get. Is it the right focal length? Is it not the right focal length? It really depends on what you're trying to do. You want to showcase to the world where you're at. You want to distort your face. You want to make yourself look a little skinny. I put on a lot of COVID weight here, but I put this lens on and boom, it's all gone. But that's the effect of this lens. It really distorts your face a lot. Now, then the other option is what happens if you go a little bit wider? Let's pop that lens on. And now here you go. Do you see a difference? Probably not, because this is the exact same lens, but there's one little difference. I took off the focal reducer, okay? And by taking off the focal reducer, what ends up happening is this is not even 16mm anymore. In fact, it's at 11mm. And 11mm without the focal reducer, you're getting the full 1.6x crop. It comes out to be about 17mm, so it's almost identical. But the difference is that although I'm fully stopped out, even if I put my finger out, the background is less blurry, and also it's a little less brighter. But it gives you the same kind of distortion. So the advantage, the reason you would put a focal reducer on a 16mm is so that you can get 17mm, but if you don't have 17mm, but you got a Tokina 11-16 like I do over here, you still get the same effect. Now, what happens if I zoom in? Boom, now I'm at 16mm, which is what this looks like though, is that this looks like a 24mm on a full frame lens. Again, is this a right, appropriate focal length? Again, I personally like this focal length because there is less distortion. My face is closer to what it looks over there than it does over here. There's still a little bit of distortion. You can still see some of the background. And if I put my arm out all the way, right, you'll be able to still see a lot of the background. A lot of your point and shoots, they basically come at this. Your cell phone camera is very similar to this. So 24mm for wide angle is actually really, really good. Now, here's the thing. Can you zoom in or zoom out? I can zoom out. I can zoom in. Now, do you want to use a zoom or prime? It's really irrelevant. Your pocket, or rather your bank account, is going to dictate whether you get a zoom or prime or fast prime or slow prime. But ultimately, we're still at the wide angle, but we're not at ultra wide angle anymore, because this is around what 24 millimeter looks like. Now, let's switch over to a different lens. All right, so it looks the same. This is in fact a 17 millimeter right now. I'm on a different zoom lens, a 17 to 55 millimeter f2.8. This is the Tokina that we were on just now. But the Tokina at 16 millimeter versus this at 17 millimeter, do you notice a difference? Unlikely. The only difference you might notice is that the footage is a little bit more smooth. And the reason it's a little bit more smooth is because there's image stabilization on this lens. So this is something that you may want to be cognizant and aware of, is that if you're getting a lens, does it have an image stabilization? It's less about the focal length. And you'll notice as I move in versus I move out, there is an effect on the distortion of the face. There's still distortion of the face at 17 millimeters. Again, this is equivalent to a 28, 27 millimeter on a full frame lens. But again, you look on that camera and then you look on this camera. Let me give it a similar composition, right? So similar composition in this camera versus that camera. You see the difference in the way that my head is shaped, my face looks, it's gonna be significantly different. And even on a, if I try to get almost a head and shoulder, more than head and shoulder shot, we compare it on that super telephoto versus even on this one. I think this here, these two are almost the same composition, this and this. And you'll notice things are a little bit different. The key difference is that the background is more compressed. The entire black drop that you see behind me is covered in the screen in all three of these cameras. But on a wide angle, you'll see it's further away. And this is the effect of wide angle in general. Everything that I've covered up to so far, the wide angle is essentially gonna make it look like as if the background is further away. It gives the appearance of your environment being larger than it actually is. Although we're in a relatively large room, so, and if I were to take 1, 2, 3 steps, then I'm at the background. If I take 3 steps forward, now that background is far away. So this is the effect. Now, what happens if we come into something a little bit more neutral, something that's, say, a 35 millimeter equivalent? If we go to, say, boom, like a 28. Now this is like a 35 millimeter equivalent. I just zoomed in. This is the benefit of a zoom lens. I can go boom, boom. And right there, you get a head and shoulder shot. For vlogging, the question is, do you want a head and shoulder shot? Do you want a, well, what this is called in film terminology, this is a close-up. This is a medium close-up or maybe a tight medium shot. That right there is a medium shot right there. There's another medium close-up. That's another medium close-up, but it's from a side profile, essentially if the person is speaking. And that right there is a medium shot, right? So essentially it's a composition that you're looking for. In all of these focal lengths, it's not the focal length that you're trying to compose, it's the composition. Is it a close-up? Is it a medium shot? It is a tight medium shot, or do you want a full-on medium shot, which you can get with an ultra-wide lens? Let me show that to you again. Boom, right? So this is a, this is on the, all the way at 11 millimeters, it's about 17 millimeter equivalent. This is the same kind of composition or layout that I have over here. Again, very, very, very different. Spaghetti arms, short arms. That's the key factor. Again, the background looks even further away, right? Again, back to that. Boom. Now, I'm on actually a very different lens. So I got both my zoom lenses here. This is the 17 to 55, and this here is the 11 to 16 Tokina. What I'm shooting on right now is a 22 millimeter, right here, teeny tiny lens. 22 millimeter pancake EFM lens. And you'll notice there's a lot more blurry background because this is a faster lens. And if I hold it here at arm's length at 35 millimeters, you'll notice that the background is fully black, it's fully compressed, similar to both of these different angles. And so this is the equivalent of what a 35 millimeter would look like at arm's length, handheld, but this is a 22mm f2. Still, technically it's a wide angle lens, but you'll notice that the distortion on the face is significantly different, which is now again, same composition at 35mm, and that's at like 100mm. Same composition, different focal length, but I can't touch that. I think it's too far away, right? And so that's one of the things that you want to keep in mind. Now, usually the range for vlogging is going to be between, if you're comparing it to full frame focal lengths, it's gonna be between 16 and 35, and if you're feeling adventurous, maybe 50. And this is what a 55mm, or rather a 50mm would look like. Boom. So this is what a 50mm essentially looks like. Super tight, very compressed up close, but I'm at arm's length. That's the key difference here, being at arm's length. And I'm actually using a focal reducer right now. So this is 50mm at like f2. I'm actually zoom. Now what happens is if I were to bring this down even more, boom, you get super blurry background. Even my ears are out of focus. But if I bring it up to like a f2, like the other lens was, then my whole head is in focus, but the background is, even my hand at this point is just blurred out. Again, 50mm f1 at 1.1x crop is gonna be equivalent to like a 52, 53mm. But if I were to put this on without any focal reducer, it's gonna look like this, boom. So this is it, this is at 50mm. Again, f2, no like extreme close-up. This is at arm's length. Like this is the best I can do. In fact, because it's so up close and everything's micro jitters, I'm gonna have to turn on the image stabilization. So let me just go ahead and do that now. So if I turn on image stabilization, boom. So now all the micro jitters are gone, but it's still an extreme close-up. Like literally, this is of how much of my face I can literally see at arm's length. Now, if I put the zoom on, now this gives me a lot of inflexibility. If I wanted to be able to vlog with this, what I would have to do is I would have to essentially set this thing down, right? And just kind of walk away and get the appropriate length, and hopefully it catches my face. And this is how you vlog at 50mm. I don't recommend it unless you really, really, really want to get up close like this, and you definitely want to have, or you want super blurry background. But I would suggest, my advice, if you're first starting out, you want to go with this particular zoom lens. Let me show you. Boom, right? This right here is the 17 to 55. Essentially, it's within the medium range, right? It is a 17 to 55, aka a 24 to 70 equivalent-esque type of lens. And the benefit of such a lens is that if you want to be at arm's length, you want to get a head and shoulder, a slightly wider shot, you can do that. And in the moment you want to get people to pay attention to what you're saying, you could crop into that, really tight, extreme close up, listen to what I got to say, because what I'm about to say is going to be super important, and you could zoom out. Now, one of the benefits of such a lens, do I have it on? Yeah, it's turned on. Image stabilization, right? A lot of the micro jitters are gone, but you'll notice, I'll bring it in this tight, there's still some micro jitters that are gonna be visible. But what I can do is I can turn off the recording, and then I can go, right? There you go. So, in fact, digital ISO was on, there's still micro jitters. But at tight focal lengths, there's always gonna be some sort of micro jitters. But again, the only reason you're gonna zoom in this close is because you wanna tell people, hey, I got something really important to say, listen to what I gotta say, and then you can zoom back out to something that is more comfortable, less in your face. But now it's a question of, when it comes to vlogging, okay? I'm just gonna put this down real quick. Boom. So when it comes to vlogging, there's really two focal lengths that you want to pay attention to, right? You want to pay attention to the medium shot, right? Or the medium close-up kind of thing, which is what you see over here, and you see it on this angle. And then the next thing that you want to do is you want to get people to pay attention to you, so you want to come into a close-up. Now the close-up is going to vary, right? Either you get a close-up like this, right here, and you record with multiple cameras, and you cut back and forth between having a close-up or having a medium shot, and in terms of when something is important or something is just in general. Or the other option is you can move into the camera. Now, if you move into the camera like this and you're at a wide angle, there's gonna be distortions. Sometimes people think the distortion looks good. Other times people are like, this distortion doesn't look good, or you can just kind of step away. The other option is if you're at a tight focal length, right? So what you can do is, let's say you're dealing with a 55 or 50 millimeter kind of scenario. This is equivalent to more like an 85. So either you put the camera down, you have your hands free, and if you really want to get people to pay attention to you, whoa, I gotta make sure that your tripod is balanced appropriately. But if you really want people to pay attention to you, that's when you kind of punch in, you move your feet, right? And then you move back out to the point where you're comfortable standing. But again, these are the focal lengths that you want to essentially be cognizant of whenever you're vlogging. And at the end of the day, it's not about focal lengths. It's not about whether you have a prime, like a prime 55, which on crop sensor is like an 85, or prime 22, which on a crop sensor is about 35, or an ultra wide zoom, or what you have here is a standard zoom, right? It's not about the focal length. What it is, it's about the appropriate composition. The composition. Is it a medium shot or is it a close-up, right? This is the key difference. If you can hit these two focal lengths, you basically hit most of vlogging. And if you need to get wider than this, you put the camera down and you push back. So you're at a wide angle, right? You put that camera down as such, right? And then you essentially step back and you've got, hey guys, look, I am in a recording studio, in a conference room, in a hotel. Look at the back, big black drop that I got going on behind me, right? And at that point, it's just a matter of stepping in and out. 24 to 70 on a full frame, or a 17 to 55, or a 16 to 55, or an 18 to 35, or even a 16 to 35 on full frame, which you then put on a crop sensor without focal reduction, or even with focal reducer. These are great focal ranges, but keep in mind, the faster the lens, the higher quality the lens, the more money you're gonna pay. This lens right here, this 17 to 55 Canon lens cost me maybe close to $300. This one right here, Tokina 11 to 16, okay? This cost me like maybe another 300 or 350. The 50 millimeter, this bad boy, this goes for like $100 on eBay used. And this guy, the 35 mil, or actually 22 mil, but 35 equivalent, this goes for like 150 or so off of Amazon used. So cost, obviously cheaper to buy prime lenses, but you're gonna be limited in terms of what you could do. So if you wanna get your close-up, right, or your medium shot, you're gonna have to move the camera back and forth. Whereas with the zoom, you can move the camera back and forth, or if you want, you can zoom in or you can zoom out. Different ways to get the focal length or get the composition that you want, right? Either the focal length or using a zoom. Doesn't matter, no. But if you want versatility and you're starting out, then I would recommend you get this particular lens. I hope you guys found this video of benefit. I'm just wrapping up production here in San Antonio, headed back to Houston, headed back to Space City very soon. If you have any questions, let me just, boom, leave that here. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you soon. Let's tear this joint down.